Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Caleb Johnston, and today we are going to be doing a hopefully short and sweet tier list on the arguments for the existence of God. I feel like every single theist or atheist or agnostic YouTuber has done one of these things, and I'm going to keep it really simple just to keep it short because I am not that deep into all of the various versions of these arguments, so I don't want to try to splice out which is which and mix them up and get a bunch of people mad at me, so I'm just going to go with the basics and try to give as quick of an explanation as I can, why I put it where I did, and just get it done real quick, not keep you guys forever watching me ramble on about each one and then, mix up a definition or something. So, with that being said, let's jump straight into the arguments. The first one is the argument from consciousness. So I'm going to put this argument under it's neither good nor bad. So basically, I believe that's B tier. Yeah. Now, why is that? Now, argument from consciousness, I'm going to be very honest, is not one that I have fully understood. From what I'm aware, though, it is that the existence of consciousness and the ability to contemplate the universe in the way that we do is most likely or more likely to be originated in God, to be created by God, to be given to us by God than natural causes or evolution, whichever one you want to cause it, like one and the same, essentially. So the reason I don't find this argument particularly compelling is that I can also see it being simply the advancement of the mind from lower primates to higher primates. For instance, with humans, we are a very high primate. We are the highest intelligence primate, I believe. If I remember, yeah, we are. Forgive me, I'm forgetting. But at the same time, it is one of those issues where I simply don't see perfect arguments for it in a naturalistic sense. I can see ways to refute those, but I can also see ways to refute the divine arguments. I think it's begging the question and assuming that consciousness would be something that would be given by God and not by natural causes. Yet at the same time, I you know what I mean? It's hard to explain really. I kind of lost my thought there honestly. It's just it's one that can be taken by either side to be valid, but I can see it being caused by natural causes and being a result of just the evolutionary drive that takes the mind and develops it, and I can also see it being a divinely instituted part of the mind that we have above other animals. So, as I said, it is one of those issues where it can go either way, but at the same time, I find it less conclusive than a lot of people do, just from personal opinion. Now, the argument from miracles. Now, I'm not going to put this in S tier. I was considering putting it in S tier, which a lot of people might be shocked by, but the reason I'm putting it in it's very good but not compelling enough is because miracles are really a hit and a miss. There are a lot of things a while back that we considered to be miraculous that now we know to be basic natural causes. Many diseases that were considered to be demonic, for instance, Holy Kool-Aid has a set of videos on YouTube discussing that. And, virtually every age we've had something that's been picked out and it's like, that's divine and oh, it's actually natural. But the truth is, I find that there are a lot of miracles and a lot of occurrences that are claimed to be miracles that definitely require some looking into. They break the bounds of nature as we know them in ways that are less explainable and definitely more human. They feel more I don't even know how you call it, more personable. They're not just these causes of things that we assume are divine. They're things that really only work under a assumption of the divine being real, the assumption of God being real. Now, does that necessarily mean there won't be explanation for them? No. Hence why I don't think it's a perfect argument or can turn somebody into a theist, hence why I'm not a theist yet. But I have been planning to look into many of those miracles, and I think there's a lot to them that you really have to consider honestly, unless you're going to be a rampant skeptic or something ridiculous, which I try to be an honest skeptic, so you get the point. But with that being said, I'll move on to the next one, which is very close, and that is the argument from personal experience. And this one is going one tier down. Now you might be thinking, huh? Or many of you might be like, well, that does make sense, and I hope it does, because the argument from personal experience only really works half of the time. Now, why is that? Because there are simply a lot more things that can be explained by psychological phenomena, plural, that people assume to be supernatural. And there are a lot of things that, for instance, people claim they've seen during drug trips, people claim they've seen during times of sorrow, uh, you know, near-death experiences, and a lot of things that have been later seen to be, definitely just occurrences of the occurrences of the psyche that people kind of just assume are supernatural and they just draw the conclusion, and there's nothing unreasonable about that, but scientifically speaking it's not that conclusive, and it seems more likely to just be a natural cause that was misinterpreted than an actual supernatural occurrence. This, of course, though, yet again, it's a very broad spectrum. This depends on the personal experience. Some are more valid than others, and some have more obviously supernatural seeming causes, and some look more natural. It really just depends on the experience. So to put it higher or lower would require me to know what type of personal experience we're talking about. And next we have the cosmological argument, and this one is yet again going in B tier, or it's neither good nor bad. Why is that? Well, I can just see the cosmological argument going either way. It's essentially that the beginning of the universe most likely makes sense that it was willed into existence by God. Now, that's an oversimplification, but you get my point. Now, I see the logic of this argument, but it's simply inconclusive. It's assuming that more than natural forces is required for the universe to begin existing, or for the universe that we are in, or for certain parts of that universe to exist, or for life to begin. It's essentially the cause must be God. It's begging a question, kind of assuming that it must be. It's not a bad concept, especially given the desire for God that so many people have had throughout history. You know, you can kind of, if you add other arguments to it, it becomes a lot more viable. But on its own, I could see it going either way. I could see it being caused by God, and I could see it being caused by natural causes. Really, there's nothing for me that tips the scale on that. So, and anyway, yes, I'll move to the next one. The moral argument. It sounds good, but not convincing. Now, why? You might be kind of shocked to hear that. Well, this is mainly because I already don't know if I see exact arguments for objective morality, which is what this argument is based on, which is essentially if objective morals exist, then God must exist to hold those um, objective morals in existence. It's very platonic, the idea of having like a realm of ideas and a realm of morals and stuff that are separate from the realm of physical existence or reality, and yet we can perceive them and we can look into those realms. It's kind of based on that, and it's been there for a long time, but I simply don't find it convincing because I am very much susceptible to looking at it in an emotivist way of speaking, which is that emotions drive our morals, and then we interpret them as separate, but they are simply created by emotions, etc. There's a lot of different things. I'm not really conclusive on that yet, but at the same time, I think the moral argument just doesn't work unless you've already assumed XYZ. And you guys can look into it more if you'd like. I haven't looked into it as much as I wish. Now, the ontological argument. I just think it's a bad argument. I'm sorry. I really, really am. But I was reading in Michael Humer's genius book on philosophy, it's like a basics of philosophy type book. He was discussing a response to this argument that goes as follows. And also, for reference, the ontological argument says that when contemplating a perfect being, that perfect being must exist because existence is greater than non-existence. And therefore, because we are contemplating it long story short, I'm not going to mess myself up by trying to misspeak it here. I just know that it has something to do with that. So, long story short, the metaphor should help. And that is that a perfect pizza must exist because a perfect pizza must exist because existence is better than non existence. And therefore, to contemplate a perfect pizza, the perfect pizza must exist because there's a kind of a link to the chain at the end that I'm a bit unfamiliar with, but I do remember reading through it several times and being kind of unconvinced by it. So I will admit, bad timing. This is an unscripted video, so. But with that being said, let's move on to the final one. I still think it's a bad argument. There's just too many ways to refute it, and it's not as much based on evidence as much as it is on kind of an abstract principle. But anyway, back down to the teleological argument, the final one on this list. And I would say it sounds good, but not convincing. Why is that? Well, the teleological argument has to do with really just pointing out the complexities of biology, life, and the universe, and then attributing it to God being the only possible cause of it instead of natural causes. The truth is, I see the point of the argument, and it makes perfect sense. There are a lot of things that are just so complicated. It's like, whoa, how could that just exist? And yet, there are quite a lot of good arguments and evidences that things have developed over time, and that's where we have things like the theory of evolution, which not just a theory, it's pretty much a proven fact that there are things that have evolved from simpler mechanisms, and so it makes a lot more sense to me that these things that are great and complicated could simply be the result of simpler mechanisms evolving, or simply foundational facts of the universe that didn't have necessarily a cause. So, as much as I find the argument to be rather interesting, I also find the argument to just not necessarily tick the necessary boxes to make the jump from natural to God. So, anyway, with that being said, that is the end of the tier list. Hopefully, I made it shorter than the first take I took because I redid it to try to make it less extensive. As I said, my bad on the ontological argument. You guys can look it up for yourself. I've just seen it to be a bit of a begging the question type of argument, too abstract for my own liking. I know I butchered it towards the end, but I'm tired. I don't want to do any more takes. So, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you all in the next video.